welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, middle of the week. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. I know this is the new federal holiday. What is this, the third year now? Or fourth year? Is this fourth year, right? That this has been a federal holiday? I don't know.
Don't care enough to know.
Well, I wasn't even aware that it was happening until
old.
earlier this week. So, you know, it's a federal holiday.
I do note that the UCOM's breakfast lunch menu today is exceptional for the occasion. So.
Yeah, I saw that. They were like, "Oh, well, it's this and that," and then I saw baked mac and cheese, and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go!" And it had cornbread, and had some other things in it. I was like, "That's like Southern ethnic right there."
Yeah, I don't think Southern is the way they were going, but okay.
I know that, but you see, that's the thing that everybody makes a big deal about soul food, right? Well, 95% of soul food is just Southern food.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
From various parts. The only thing that that the people like me may have it is a little more of the sauerkraut or things like that. But of course, because it's Southern, it's not sauerkraut and sausage; it's sauerkraut and hot dogs. Or if you really want to go low, Vienna sausage.
I can't believe you just claimed sauerkraut as Southern food.
Hey, man, there's a lot of Germans lived in the South,
but Germans aren't from the South.
So, right, like
they're from. That's right. Most of the people in the South aren't from the South; they're from Europe, and then they came to the South. Right. There's a lot of Germans in a lot of different places. What's funny, Joe, is when you run into those Italian families that somehow made it to the South. Before the main, post Civil War immigrants from Italy came in. Boy, Scottish are from the South. Yeah, a lot of Scots in the South. A lot of, I assume sauerkraut is a German thing, but my understanding is there's sauerkraut all over Europe. So it's just, it's kind of famous from Germany, though. So
I wonder how it got spread all over Europe.
I wonder. A lot of
Erica plays.
Exactly.
I do not see how that could possibly have happened.
Well, I think that's much more of a recent type of wave of invasion. I was thinking more like 30 Years War or something like that. That's how Swedish meatballs got all over the place, right? All right. Anyway, today we're talking the Middle East, Morass, and Putin. So that means we're talking the Middle East in general. A lot of stuff in and around what's happening with Israel. And also we'll be talking a little bit about that sunken ship we talked a little bit about it on Monday, Joe, before you lost connection. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and kind of the implications. So, from looking at that video and from reading some things, we've learned some new information about that security team and how good security versus bad security. You kind of get what you pay for. Or maybe it's just there's too much demand and not enough supply. But anyway, I'd like to pick your brains on how the security could have made the difference on a situation like that.
What's funny is when I called a contact, he said, "I know why you're calling, and no, it wasn't us." But anyway,
very good, very good.
I wanna call shenanigans on Mexican Iron Man. It sounds like it probably would. Check out his $4.99.
Yeah, right here, Mexican Iron Man for $4.99. As a Mexican now living in South Carolina, I can say that I love Southern cooking, but salsa does not mix good with the cheese grits. Yeah, right. Certain things just don't kind of go into the Southern ethnic mix, So, and Pinochet's Helicopter Tours has another related over there in Rumble for $5. He says, "I had to explain Juneteenth for the billionth time to a rich elderly people where I work. I celebrate Juneteenth by making homemade hardtack and LARPing my own Sherman's March through Massachusetts."
Hey, speaking of making hardtack or other ancient foods, I had a South African hand make me this biltong. Don got to try some of it, but
oh my God, it's good.
2 packages of cranberry biltong made by an authentic South African last week. So good stuff.
I was actually driving through the Ville outside of Camp Humphreys today, and I noticed a restaurant called Biltong and something. I was like, and they had the right. I don't have no idea what they sell there, but they got the right name and they had the right pictures on the outside of the
Oh, yeah.
place. And so I'm like, no, I gotta swing past there and see. One thing that you can get in South Korea that a lot of people are not aware of, and I don't know if this is a South Korean thing or if they brought it from somewhere else and just adopted it here, but is they do these large sheets of beef jerky that are absolutely amazing. What I'll do, I'll try to get some and bring some with me when I come to the States this summer, guys. You will be.
Well, that segues us nicely to our next announcement about this summer.
Yes, we need to have that announcement right now.
Let's do that. All right. So the show is on for this summer. We have one big change. It will still be in Montana. It will still feature all the same folks and the same things that we've been talking about, but we've had to change the date. We had a big conflict. And in order for us to basically make the show happen, it's going to be the weekend after the original weekend. So I believe it's
to the 4th.
Right. It's still Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but it's I'm sorry, I caught the chat out of the corner of my eye. I can't help it. So it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I think some people will probably get there maybe the day prior, and there may be, people leaving on Monday as well. But the 3 days of the event will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It'll be a full day Friday, full day Saturday, and I believe it's half day or most part day on Sunday. Is that correct, or is it full day on Sunday?
Well, I think what will happen is we'll drop all major content around 2 or 3, but there'll still be stuff for folks who do stay. I mean,
great.
Not like we're gonna be like, get out, right?
Yeah,
I'll still be there.
Yeah.
You might not be, but I'm bringing a cattle prod, and people are leaving. That's all I'm saying.
No cattle prod.
So Don spent a week, a few days on a cattle ranch, and now everything's about cattle prods and.
Sure. That is. Well, you know what? Somebody's now sliding into my DMs talking to me about cattle all the time.
Yeah.
I guess so. We're having to. This is not a kind of we want to know if you're okay with the change on the dates. We're letting you know that we're having to change the dates, and this is the date we can make it happen. So if there's anybody in the chat that was thinking about coming but can't come, you can reach out and let us know if there's any issues. It's not much we can do about it at this point, but I just want to make sure that we're all good. We're not trying to. This literally was something that came up here within the last week, and we wanted to make sure. First of all, we had to make sure that we couldn't still do the old date. But then now that this has happened, we want to make sure we let you guys know as soon as possible. So there we go. That's the date. The website will be coming out soon, and we will have the link for that ready to go. Probably.
To be very clear to all of our beloved guests, this is not arbitrary. This is something that had to happen as a result of various resources that will not be available through the company that's helping us do this Shield Arms. So
yeah.
Natalie, if you could make sure that your dates on the flights are right. We just said 2nd through the 4th. So, and yes, you can. There are RV pads. I'm not really 100% sure on the hookups, but there are pads. So.
And if they're not, I bet there's some within the area close by for actual hookups. I would guess.
There'll be another. We'll give a listing on the website that's forthcoming this week. Shield is working on it right now. It'll also have a listing of RV parks that have hookups. Don, I don't remember, were there hookups at those pads that we walked by, or
I don't know.
Or Sean, whoever was there.
I don't remember seeing any pads with hookups.
We can ask Stan when he comes by.
That is the guy.
Yeah.
Although I do have to say, in a very predictable turn of circumstances, it turns out that I know our audience better than Don does, And yeah, I don't know who you thought you were turning off with the cattle prods, Don.
I didn't say how they were leaving. I said they were leaving.
I just love Pinochet always comes with the right angle. A date change. Oh, I thought y'all were going to announce somehow you ended up with a bunch of javelins missing from Ukraine.
Mexican Iron Man, if you're here for the first time, I know that this isn't the first time, but if you're unaware of what we're talking about, we're hosting an event. It's not just us. Shield Arms, as well as several other groups, are kind of all coming together to do a little summer camp out, little powwow, have some fun,
Right.
share some stories.
Basically, just 30 seconds of history. Basically, the idea, we did a meetup last summer. It was very successful for what it was, and so we want to kind of up our game this summer. I originally started as a CFC event, but it's gotten bigger. A lot more people way bigger than us are going to be there. We've got a couple people who have reconfirmed with us that these dates are good as far as like content developers and writers and other people who are going to be there. Also, the other thing that makes this a much better event, I think, is the fact that Shield Arms is throwing their sponsorship behind it. And so, like I said,
there's going to be 1,000-yard rain.
Maybe.
Rumor has it the governor of Montana might be cited at said event, and the attorney general.
That. Also, potentially a senator, I heard as well.
Yeah, some candidates for office, people like that.
So candidate, not necessarily a senator.
Yeah,
We're not big fans of the senator.
That's what I should say. Senator in potentia. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
But anyway,
if Mexican Iron Man wanted some stage time, I'm sure we could get it for you, and you could bill it as a meet and greet for your fans as well.
Also, you can come set up a salsa booth.
I tell you what, anybody who is aligned with us in that wants to come out and invite their fans, absolutely, we would welcome that. I think it's going to be perfect time of year for this. August, Montana is beautiful, and especially if you're in the South, it would probably be a great break from the 95 degrees and 85% humidity that you're probably living through anywhere.
I just like 5 inches of snow yesterday, so
I just like the wisdom of doing it mid-country instead of either East or West Coast.
Yeah, I do too. I understand that. Well, I don't know that this is what you'd call mid-country. I think like maybe Missouri would be mid-country, but I get what you're saying, Watcher.
Who's right in the middle? I mean, I'm just saying.
Are we gonna make an argument that we all need to come hang out down there?
Let me answer, Lance Corporal Veteran. We will be having a website up, I am told, by the Shield Marketing Department this week. So
actually, you know what, Don? I just realized you are correct. For a winter one, you're perfect.
Yeah, probably. Well, it does snow here. It does get cold here. It does not snow or get cold like it does up there.
Yeah.
Don and I toured a property that'd be great for this, but it's ridiculously hot in the summer, so.
Well, a certain place in North Carolina might be good for a fall, spring, winter event as well. So,
and we're gonna find out this fall with Canine Reaper live from the G Camp. So
I can't wait for that. You should almost see if you can do a impromptu broader event with having him there. I mean, as much as he wants to learn there,
being in charge of this, he's got some ideas. So
I think
I badly want to come.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the CFC has nothing to do with that, but I'm sure that all those guys are big friends of ours, and I'm sure they would welcome any CFC fans who want to show up and provide their support.
They welcomed Hunch, and we let him stick around for the weekend. So, I mean,
wow, that speaks
Hunch is he's a funny motherfucker. So, I mean, I don't blame you. Even though he is in the chat, there you go. Bring the rabbit chicken taco truck. There we go.
There will actually be food trucks at this event. So.
Yeah, we do let not a YouTubers come and if you want, so put it on your calendar there, Mexican Iron Man. All right. Gentlemen, let's go around the horn real quick. Joe, welcome. I'm glad you could make it. Your connection is much better than it was on Wednesday. It helps that you're not like, driving 75 miles an hour down the highway.
Today is Wednesday. I'm pretty sure you meant Monday, but yes.
I mean on Monday. I was talking about your connection on Monday.
Yeah. I'm actually glad to be home. I'll be honest, the first thing I bought when I got home was a battery operated fan because it was stupid hot. It was like over 100 degrees every day, and sleeping conditions were about 95. So it was not cool. Bought a fan right away. But so now all energies are devoted to getting the August event now up and running, and we are solid on those dates. I've talked with Linda and Al, and we're gonna have a great time out at that at Camp Ponderosa. Folks will get a chance to tour it. I know that a lot of good people like Exumbris Designs and a couple of the other training/podcast folks in the preparedness world are coming out. So I'd like everyone to come on out. Another great group I want to shout out is our hosts for last week. If you go to Twitter and check out Untapped Growth, you'll see some videos from the site and all that stuff. It is a herd share cattle ranch. They're doing some unique genetics with their cows, making them more hardy and resilient, and kind of creating a economy outside of the economy where you can barter and trade for things with your herd share. So it's a pretty solid concept. They're doing great work. The boys work sun up to sundown, running a 300 head of cattle. And it's a great ranch. Check them out. Very cool thing. And he's running sort of an internship program for South Africans, apparently, because he's rotating them in and out. So it's a really neat group. Check them out. Joel and his people are fantastic. Great hosts. Yeah. Anyway, we had fun.
Great guys in general.
Speaking of South Africans, if you're not following the adventures of Lord Miles as he traverses the South Africa, Canine Reaper has been sharing a lot of stuff on that. So I would recommend, if you're not following Canine Reaper over on X, please do, if not only just to laugh at Lord Miles and his ridiculous haircut.
I find it funny that over in the Rumble chat, Pinochet Helicopter Tour says that Canine Reaper is not a very talkative guy. He's not a talkative guy on the show.
I was going to say
he is a very talkative guy.
Maybe not. Absolutely. Maybe not when it's being publicly recorded, but
yeah. So he's going to be a lot of fun to have in class. I encourage anyone to come on out. That class is going to fill up quickly, and that's the October 11th through 16th Scout and Recce courses at NC Scouts Place. But on that note, I want to kind of pat myself on the back. We had another group of guys come to the Fieldcraft class with Don and I, and the guys really loved it. And I'm going to tell you, people who've been to the Scout course said that they wish they had taken my Fieldcraft course first. So on that note, we have Fieldcraft classes coming up in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Missouri. So check out my schedule to look at those. And the week before the Montana event, I know it's got a different date on it, but I'm going to host a community security class the 26th and 27th at Camp Ponderosa in Montana. So you could make a whole week of it. Come to the community security class, spend the week hanging out with me in Montana. Don and I found all the cool spots to go to when we were there the last time.
Yep. What's the dates on that one?
26th through the 28th.
Okay. All right. So that's the just previous to.
Yeah, the weekend just before.
Yeah, very good. Very good. And since Joe will be there all that week, I'm sure,
Yeah, if anyone arrives early, I will be there. Having fun, doing the thing.
I gotta figure out my my itinerary for that. So I told my wife I wouldn't be gone too long, but at the same time, I wanna get in my extra reps before the first day of the show. All right, Sean, thank you. I'm going to go do a speed round of this. Sean, welcome. Thank you for being here. Anything to mention?
Pouring one out for my Zen homies since they've been canceled by the federal government.
Well, as it happens.
We don't have time to get into it, but I looked into that, and I'll have to share a post with you. Turns out, maybe not so much. Well, might just be a DC thing.
All right. We'll check that out. Don, it's I loved it. You were summoned and you appeared. Welcome this Wednesday. How are things going? You got to spend some time with some quality time with Joe last week. Yes,
I did. He is speaking gently about how awesome our hosts were. They're great people all the way around. And from like the moment we got there till the moment we left, is one of the bad things about going to Joe's classes is that by the time it's time for me to leave, I don't want to go home. So
True story. True story.
you know, I even had to leave a little bit early, and I know I was walking around like somebody had kicked my puppy because like, all right, fine, I guess I'll pack the car and go home. In the world of things to announce, I hear tell you can't say the website anymore, but bonginos.com/pleb media is in fact producing content again. So
Hey, we did it. I gotta text Tommy right now.
yeah, right. I think I texted both of you when I put up the first video. I was like, there, are we happy now?
Operation Beat Don into Submission is a success.
Right. So it is not the old show. I know that any number of people want the old show back, but I simply don't have time for the old show. And so I've cut out a lot of the example material that was, daily content and just cut to these are the lessons that you probably should have learned along the way.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing is that, a lot of the things that we started seeing in 2020, right? In all realms, we're just seeing them again in worse situations and different situations. So it's kind of like we're starting to get into repetition territory with all the things that we started to see in recent years. So it's kind of like, you're just reminding people, if you didn't learn it the first time, here's another opportunity to learn it. So,
it is a little bit less direct than that. And for chat who is saying that, you didn't watch last weekend's post, that's because I was hanging out with Joe and there was no post last weekend. So
there you go. Look at that.
Yeah, and you know what, Don? I wanted to tell you, after you left, the guys were just so appreciative that you had been there, and one of them in particular was like, "Hey, I was such a huge fan of Don beforehand, and I'm glad to see him getting out and doing stuff." So that was pretty cool.
It is wildly flattering sometimes to take a year off the internet or more than.
Yeah. And for the record, everyone, we caught Don enjoying himself assisting in the teaching of folks again. So perhaps there could be classes.
There could be. I don't know what they're going to look like.
I sure hope there are. All right. And Watcher, of course. I know you're not feeling too good, Watcher, so apologize for the long intro, but we will endeavor to get going forthwith. All right.
It's good. I found something hilarious that I think is just a quick mood setter. It was not part of the notes, but it's so funny to me. So there's this channel. It's called Elon Docs. It's just they're documenting Elon. A lot of people have said that this is for blackmail purposes. I don't know. I will say that this clip that they just released this morning is it's interesting.
He said, I don't usually do this, but I'd love to see you tomorrow. Can we meet for breakfast? And we had breakfast, and then at the end of breakfast he said, will you come and have lunch with me? So then we went for lunch, and then he said, will you come to dinner? And then I remember one evening he said, would you like to come back to my hotel room so we can look at rocket videos? And I thought, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come back. And we did go into his hotel room, and he did just show me rocket videos.
Breaking news: guy that runs the space program is a giant nerd.
She sounded a little disappointed too, right? She's like,
she's like, I thought I was going to be the new baby's. She's like, I thought I was going to be the new baby's mama.
Oh, that was breaking news. Elon Musk autistic. More at 11.
Well, can I just say that when guys don't feel good, they don't lose their sense of humor, right? Girls lose their sense of humor when they don't feel good, but guys, I love it. We could be battling through like nausea and all that kind of stuff, a migraine, and yet you're still able to laugh at a joke. And I appreciate that about you, Watcher. Watcher is not feeling well today. He's a little bit under the weather, but he is absolutely loyal and resilient friend, and he's here. He's here with us. So we appreciate you, brother. All right, let's jump into it. First up today in the odds and ends, we're talking about some Philippines on China action. Turns out the Chinese Coast Guard attack yesterday against a Filipino resupply mission into the second Thomas Shoal was more aggressive than initially thought. The overpowered Philippine military personnel on one of the boats and confiscated the crew's firearms. The Filipino sailor lost a finger, and many more were wounded from water cannons and the Chinese ramming operations. Joe, remember the video of those water cannons just absolutely punching through that one ship? This is no joke. It would be really easy for this to push somebody overboard, and then you're lost at sea, right? And the Chinese are like, "Oh, we didn't see him."
I don't know if you've ever hit with a fire hose, but it is no joke.
I have never been hit by a fire hose. I've been on the receiving end of a lot of stuff, but never a fire hose. It says here the Chinese Coast Guard towed one of the Filipino boats away and stopped all four from resupplying the Filipino crew in the Sierra Madre. That's that beach ship on the second Thomas Shoal that we've talked about and featured pictures of before. The second Thomas Shoal is within the Filipino waters, only 250 kilometers away from the main Philippine islands, but nearly 1,000 kilometers away from the nearest Chinese territory. And yet the Chinese are willing to go to war over this because, let's be honest, Joe, when you go and you seize people doing legal operations, that could be called an act of war.
No, there's no could be called. Just because water cannons were used does not mean this was not a battle, right? There were casualties. There was seizure of property. The Chinese Coast Guard also seized a ship in the middle of this. So
Blaine Pardoe, of course, talking about the historic incident here when Biden got fire hosed when he was marching with Martin Luther King.
Oh, that ain't the only question he posed or only statement he made this morning. He's
what did he say?
Pretty much.
Anyway.
Pretty much. All right, moving on. So this goes in further. So we got another story here. This is from CNN. Just let's see how the progressive media here in America is spinning this. Philippines blames China for personal injury and vessel damage in South China Sea collision. And this is a picture of that, the Sierra Madre there on the second Thomas Shoal. Manila has accused China of injuring Filipino personnel and damaging Philippine vessels during a South China Sea collision earlier this week as tensions simmer over territorial disputes in the resource-rich and strategically important waterway. The Philippines and China have both blamed each other over the clash Monday near Second Thomas Shoal in the contested Spratly Islands. With a statement from the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs on Wednesday providing the first official confirmation from either side that injuries and damage were sustained. It follows multiple reports of injuries to Filipino sailors carried in local media and Associated Press, citing sources as well as from U.S. officials. The Philippine government denounces the illegal and aggressive action of Chinese authorities and resulted in the personal injury and vessel damage. Let me ask you this, guys. It makes sense that the Chinese are, being aggressive in their kind of own backyard, but with Taiwan seemingly being the focus of China's, kind of potential aggression. What do you think? Why do you think they're going out of their way to piss the Philippines off as well? It seems like you would want to placate all your other kind of local adversaries and focus just on one, so you can kind of split that one off from the herd.
There's a guy who is local to that area who wrote this book a couple thousand years ago, who said that create chaos elsewhere in order to seize what you want somewhere else. So I think it's worth noting that it's a tactic of Sun Tzu would be to cause a problem somewhere else for the rest of the world to respond to, while you actually do your real operation in an entirely different area. And for everyone who keeps telling me about the tides and the reason why they can't conduct an amphibious operation across the strait, I'll remind you, it's less than a 12-hour sail. And another tenet of Sun Tzu tactics is to strike when everyone thinks you can't strike. So,
yeah. The other part of this is, hey, let's say that I'm China, and I have what is essentially a pretty untested navy. They may have been doing a lot of drills and that kind of stuff, but as we've learned from other shakeouts we've had recently on our military, that doesn't necessarily mean anything's being done. It just means money's being spent on it. So I need to ensure the competency of my sailors before we do any kind of major naval operation, right? What better way to ensure that than to have incredibly increased naval operations all throughout the entire sphere, just your backyard, particularly among small adversaries where anything you do can very easily get smoothed over. Even if some dumb ship captain that's untrained makes some dumb mistake, it can be smoothed over with the Philippines, because the Philippines doesn't want a war.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the Philippines know that they're not in any position, to really offer significant, resistance to Chinese pressure. They're literally
we should just stop talking about China, because one of our compatriots might have publicly posted on my page that we're all wrong. China doesn't want to go to war with anybody.
Oh, well, I'm happy to tell that person how very wrong they are. Anytime they'd like to come on the show.
For those who are on the last Montana trip, you know who I'm talking about.
I was simply surprised the Filipinos had a navy.
Actually, I would be surprised more that they have a land component, because it's a nation of a couple thousand islands. So,
yeah.
Well, the irony is they've actually been pretty busy with some of those Al Qaeda related actors. What is it, Mindanao? Is that where that's at?
Mindanao, yes. Mindanao has kind of been a hotbed of revolution for the entire existence of the Philippines.
But some pretty big operations too. I mean, it's like actual battalion, brigade size operations going on. Where just what was it? 2 years ago, they had an entire city basically taken over by Islamist rebels, and it was high intensity warfare going on. Like what we saw in Iraq and some of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I will point out that for its entire existence, the Filipino Marine Corps has been a legit fighting organization. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's we're about Filipino China out for today. But I did think that this is one of those kind of things to keep your eye on, because I think we're going to see more coming from this neighborhood in the near future. Speaking of areas where we think we're going to see more of, we were just talking the other day about infiltrators into the U.S. From various countries and things that they could be doing, and threats that they could present. And it almost like on cue, we have this story pop up. Now, this is the only place I've seen this story. Watcher just showed it to me right before the show started, and I think it's very interesting and absolutely plays into what I think is really going on the southern border. And that is,
so we should highlight RTM. We have no idea. This is not a source we've ever drawn from before. We don't know. But this tracks with a lot of other things I have heard in other places. This is just the first official report I've ever seen of it. So let's get into what's in here, shall we?
So let me read the title here first. Telegram channel run by cyber police helps Chinese illegal immigrants flood into U.S. Says a report.
Yeah. The Daily Caller also covered it, but here's what we know. A phone was found on the border. The phone was left unlocked. opening the phone, there was also a telegram, and the telegram was left unlocked. And so somebody went through all the different stuff they could inside the thing, and they find that like the most interactive with Telegram channel is a channel that's got about 8,000 members, and it's hosted by a person who is claiming to be a member of the Chinese Communist Party, a government agent. I'll have to read through here. I can't remember what specific agency it was. It's like the Ministry of State Security or something like that, giving folks information on every single thing you would need to come into it. The particular channel that this was found in is called U.S. Self-Guided Tours. It tells people instructions on how to make an asylum claim, what specific elements have to be in the asylum claim for it to be immediately accepted, how to answer the return questions that they will be getting, and how to answer them in such a way that it specifically triggers the yes answer to be allowed in for asylum. Telling them where gaps have been found in the border and at what times the guard posts are changing out at those gaps. It's
pretty damning, is what it is.
Yeah.
I
We're
mean,
talking about like intricate flowcharts mapping out various potential U.S. immigration pathways. So not just the asylum pathway, but all kinds of different ways you can get in, including green cards and other things.
Yeah, I mean, it goes, and it's not just the U.S. border, right? It says here the channel lists South American locations, including Quito, Ecuador, and Colombia as starting points to reach the U.S. border. One document identifies 15 border wall gaps, with 12 located in California. So, I mean, this is like a how-to manual to get these Chinese folks into this system. Now, if you are aware of how immigrant populations work in the U.S., basically, if you're, say, a new Chinese immigrant, all you have to do is find like Chinatown, like in Los Angeles, or any big city kind of has these, like, these insular immigrant kind of populations. All you have to do is plug into those, and you have that kind of instant credit, right? And until you do something to become PNG within one of these kind of local immigrant populations, you're basically taken care of. Like within, in Korean American, in America, the Korean, usually it's grocery stores and churches, right, that the Koreans kind of congregate around. And I know my wife is Korean, and so every time she's gone to a new city and she goes to the first time to the Korean store, they immediately say, "Oh, come to church. Here are the restaurants that are good." All this kind of stuff. So it becomes this kind of whole big thing on how these immigrant populations. And when there's people who are looking to do bad things to America, it just makes it that much easier. Once you get past the border, then you're able to basically get whatever you need.
I'd be interested to see if the phone directs them to first make their way to Mexicali, Mexico, which is essentially a Mexican fob for getting people into the U.S. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's this whole rat line, right? And it's not just locations; it's people to contacts. When you get to the location, and that's the other thing too, that it's really hard when these online communities get set up. They're almost like digital speakeasies, right? If you don't know about it, then it basically doesn't exist if you don't know of its existence, or you don't have the secret handshake to get in. So, and there's several other kind of Twitter posts about this. So I think this is something that's I think it's legit. I do believe it absolutely makes sense for what we've seen, Joe, that I think this could happen. I wanted to kind of take us back just a little bit. When you look at all these different groups, and we've seen Middle Eastern groups, we've seen African groups, we've seen Chinese groups coming across. I mean, clearly they're not all working directly together, but absolutely they're probably, various takes on the same threat, just from different parts of the world with different motivations to cause trouble to the U.S. I think it was, I can't remember if it was you that said this previously or somebody else, but the idea that just because they don't coordinate directly doesn't mean that they wouldn't all, if one group started attacking within the U.S. borders, the rest of them would quickly follow suit.
Well, I think that if you take a look at some of the base incursions we've had in the last 6 months, which that same person told me isn't happening, you can't help but understand that. You have Jordanian people on the terror watch list trying to probe a base at the same time Chinese illegals are, at the same time Serbians are. I mean, there are folks from all over the world. I mean, they're not Serbians, Chechens are out pretending to be utility workers in the middle of the night. Let's add in that Durham had some sort of a suspicious attack that led to the power being let out, power going out in Durham for a while just a few days ago. So there is a lot of things going around.
I mean, not necessarily related, but also maybe I missed it when you said this. That attack on that arms producer in the UK,
Elbit. That's actually like the third time. But hey, Mark Antipattern mentioned this. What does Elbit make at that facility? Anybody know?
Night vision.
Optics.
Night vision tubes. Yes.
Additionally, I do want to say that my favorite comment I've seen on this that I thoroughly agree with is thank you, Elbit, for exposing that you don't pay red teams to do site penetration tests.
Yeah, we're past that.
Right.
You know what? I mean, we're kind of off. We're onto that topic now, off the topic of the direct border piece. Can you find that video real quick, Watcher? Let's just do a quick 5 minutes on that because I think it's important.
Yes.
Joe, we always talk. We always think like big kinetic operations. Like a massacre of some sort or a bombing, or some of these kind of traditional terror attacks when we think of threats within the U.S. But what we've really seen are electric infrastructure attacks. And then I think absolutely, this is the kind of thing that we're going to see. Maybe nobody ever gets killed, but absolutely does critical and expensive, huge amounts of damage.
Several people should have been killed during this attack. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Relevant. Before we fully move off of the border part of this, though, watch where the progressive Mormons and the progressive Catholics are moving money at to find out who's going to be the next set of illegals come in, because they are largely financially behind it because they have tax shields.
Well, real quick, I think that if you watch what they're doing, it shows you that they're lucky that these people were A, either not motivated, or B, not educated on what to damage at this place. I mean, they were basically throwing billet, basically aluminum pieces of billet off the shelf, which is probably not super damaging. But at the same time, Joe, when you make something sensitive like night vision tubes, the equipment to make is very expensive and very fragile when you've got a crowbar to destroy it.
Yeah,
and if they know the right things to go after,
it's not going to do any good. I mean, it's like, ting, oh, it didn't dent anything. Oh, but I'm getting the man, yo.
Right. And so, I mean, I think that Eva is probably lucky that these people are fairly incompetent, but at the same time, that doesn't mean the next group that comes through won't be.
A job done well. Yes, not only did they film themselves, they have it all over Telegram. And in fact, they've already been released on bail.
I personally believe, A, yes, people should have died in that attack. But B, I think that if you are a contractor for U.S. Arms and you allow your facility to be penetrated like this, you should immediately be stripped of all of your contracts.
Well, this is a contract for the British defense industry. And
we don't buy any of their tubes at all?
Oh, I didn't say that, but this facility is in the United Kingdom because just like us, they have laws that say, oh, if you're going to sell us tubes, you got to make them here. I mean, sure they do, but this was not in the U.S.
Gotcha.
And the security law situation is very different in the U.K. than it is in the U.S.
Gotcha.
That's true.
In the U.K., you can't shoot intruders. You can here.
Yeah, absolutely. You could have armed response there within minutes at a U.S. facility, and we do have facilities like this in the U.S. Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 says, anyone want info around Mexicali? Just ask. All right. We know where we got our informants out there. The council has ears everywhere. All right. Let's move on to the next odds and ends here. How did North Korean soldiers wandered across the world's most heavily guarded border? ? And this is an AP story. So if you've been following Korea, the Korean Peninsula recently, this probably has been on your radar. Now, it is not a huge story here in South Korea because this kind of thing, it's not like the first time it's happened, but it's not a completely... I would say that there has been more tension recently with the poop balloons and the K-pop music blaring across the border. So tensions have risen a little bit over here, but none of this stuff is like strange if you've been here for years and years and years. So like when I saw the story, I recognized it for what it is, but at the same time, tensions are on the rise here. Let's see. Don't believe the name. The demilitarized zone between the two rival Koreas may be the most heavily armed place on Earth. 2 billion mines, barbed wire fences, tank traps, and tens of thousands of troops. Both countries patrol a divided swath of land, 248 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. So how on the eve of Russian President Vladimir Putin's summit Wednesday with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, did as many as 30 soldiers wander into the lines separating North from South, causing South Korea to fire warning shots before the North Koreans withdrew. And there were also reports of mines going off, but we have no evidence of that outside of just kind of basic reports. The short answer appears to be shrubbery because of overgrowth of foliage in North Korea may have not seen signs marking the military demarcation line that divides the DMZ into north and south sides.
It's a lack of land navigation skill.
I was just going to say, you need to print this out and take it to class with you.
Right. This is more bungling than it is some sort of a kind of a diabolical scheme by the North Koreans to infiltrate the southern part of, across the MDL, which is the military demarcation line, which goes essentially right down the middle of the DMZ. Let's see. I want to skip down here. Okay. So on Tuesday, South Korean troops broadcast warnings and fired warning shots to turn back North Korean soldiers, somewhere between 20 to 30, who briefly crossed the demarcation line or the MDL in the DMZ. The North Koreans who had been doing construction work in the area immediately retreated, and the South military didn't spot any suspicious activity after that. The Joint Chief of Staff in Seoul said, this was the second such incident in 2 weeks. Neither incursion was an invasion or even a maneuver meant to test the South's defense, Seoul says, but more likely an accident.
Yeah, that explains it. Particularly when you've got non-soldiers there, you got construction workers there doing work. Yeah, I mean that's easy.
Well, no, these are probably military engineers doing the work, but so it like I said, I think this is more bungling than it is, diabolical plan.
Can we pause there? Because look, if you're in the middle of Vietnam and you accidentally step into Hanoi through a path that you just walk down just because, you're not going, even if you get captured on the other end, the U.S. military is going to be like, well, wait a minute, how did he just walk into Hanoi? And they're going to duplicate that. And so even if this is just some miscellaneous screw up, it is now information that North Korea has that says, hey, if we want to cross this border, this is how.
Well, except for,
and you know what, for everyone who's in the class this weekend, when I said even a difference of 1 degree can get you way off, this is a result of that, right?
Right.
Well, can you speak to the terrain around the DMZ?
I can. Scott can.
Well, yeah, it's very hilly and very overgrown. So that 4 kilometer swath of land. So essentially, what you have is you've got the northern part where the north has fences and mines, and you've got the southern part, which is where the south has fences and mines. But in the middle, there's not a huge it's not like the whole thing is filled with mines, like top to bottom, right? In the middle, you've got the MDL, right? And around the MDL, it's actually mine free. And they've called it one of the world's largest nature sanctuaries because it's basically untouched by man since the since the mid 50s. And so it's very overgrown. In South Korea, there's a lot of water, a lot of sun. And so you get heavy amounts of foliage and growth, trees coming up where there used to be fields and things like that back in the day. So it's changed quite a bit in the last, say, since the 60s, which is when you saw a lot of patrolling going on into the DMZ. I mean, we had regular small arms exchange in the DMZ up until the 60s. And so this is, so you had more presence within the DMZ itself. No permanent military people really in there outside of around Panmunjom, which is where you've got the kind of that's where Trump went across the border and shook hands with Kim Jong-un. That's where all those buildings are at the DMZ and where the tourists would go and visit and that such thing. So it's a
big engagement in the 80s though.
The last big engagement was the the Boniface murders, which is is that early 70s? I want to say that's like 76.
May 1980, North Koreans engaged U.S. rock outpost Olet on
Olet. Yeah. That's actually close to Panmunjom, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Paul Bunyan. So basically Pinochet's helicopters were talking about when Major Boniface was killed hit by an axe. They went to chop down a tree on the DMZ, and basically that created a giant military escalation just to go in and cut that tree down, which is what they did after that died. Glow in the Dark for $10 said, "Common man here. Cryptic messaging, levers are pulled, buttons are pressed, switches are flicked, and the gears are turning. The hands may be who you suspect, others not. Whose machinations is it? Who knows? I don't know. It's glows in the dark.
Sounds suspiciously Q-like. I don't know.
I appreciate the support, the $10 super chat as well. As long as you don't say anything bad about anybody that can get me in trouble, I'll read your super chats. Is Camp Boniface still there? Yes, it is still there. The UNC still has a kind of a unit up there that specifically handles all the observation and missions in and around the Panmunjom DMZ area, and there is a village still, a South Korean village in the DMZ, in the southern part of the DMZ, up there as well. All right. Enough Korea talk here. If you really, the Korea talk that I'm interested in is like where the best place to get samgyeopsal or kalbi is. That's the kind of operation I would like to do here in South Korea. So anyway, I think we'll probably see more of the similar thing, more kind of saber rattling kind of stuff, but nothing serious here because I think this Putin thing that we're going to talk about later in the show, I think North Korea has got a new injection or place to get money and resources from with this new treaty with Russia. So I think we'll see a lot. We'll see a little more saber rattling, but I think it'll actually stabilize things in a kind of weird Cold War sense of the word going forward.
Possibly.
That's just my guess. I could be wrong.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to hop out and go make breakfast for the kids. But you guys have fun, and I appreciate being here.
Hey, we appreciate you coming in, man.
Later.
Joe, before we go on with our main topic for today, why don't you talk a little bit about tactical-wisdom.com?
Sure. we're going to do a recap of the course that we did this week and talk about upcoming courses. It's really a big year for getting out and getting trained. We had some great students in class last week who really toughed it out in some ungodly hot conditions and got out and crawled through the jungle-like forest with me and Don and did our land nav course over some incredibly difficult terrain, literally the side of a cliff. These ravines were no joke. They make Matt's ravines look mild. And we didn't have anyone get lost. No one earned the second lieutenant award. They did it day and night. And they had a great time. And we really just enjoyed spending time with like-minded folks. That's really the best part of it. The time sitting around the campfire afterward. And again, our hosts on Saturday night brought over some incredibly fresh ground beef, and we made burgers over the fire like legit cowboys in Oklahoma, and we had a great time with it. And we're going to talk about the value of that time with like-minded people and what it does for your sanity, right? How it really gives you a good touch base and lets you know that you're not alone. So we're going to talk about that stuff. We're also going to talk about the need for book sales. Y'all, Mrs. Tactical Wisdom is a little concerned that we can't support this move unless we get some books sold. So go buy a book, all right? Or register for a class. Come on out and spend time with us and do some things. I am working on the 6th book in between all of this travel. It's just been a busy year with travel so far, and it's only going to get worse. Like September, October, going to be wild. So
now, for those not tracking, what's the 6th book going to cover?
This book is going to be called the Field Skills Handbook. It's going to talk about some of the everyday outdoor things that we do now and we think we're going to do when the lights go out, but how to do them in a bit more tactical of a manner. For example, a lot of us like to kayak and canoe, but that's going to look very differently if I decide to move along a river by kayak or canoe. And we're going to cover the skills to do that. We're going to cover the skills to build things with wood and rope. Sort of some old school Boy Scout stuff with a tactical twist. So I think it'll be really good. So
to caveat Joe a little bit and why you should come to classes. Both of the times that I have been out there in class, there is a reality that somebody has read the books and has read the books sometimes repeatedly, is reciting things that are in there back to Joe in the middle of class when he asks questions. Hey, what do we do here? And they're giving him back line for line. And those exact same people are the ones with the absolute best questions about, hey, you didn't cover this in the book. What do we do in this circumstance?
Yes.
And the simple reality is, no matter how good you are, and Joe is amazing, you cannot put everything in a book. All right.
Right.
And so, if you have Joe's books and you're thinking to yourself, how do I apply this? Where do I make this work? Going to those classes, while it is not part of the class structure, there's a lot of time after class to sit down and talk about, hey, in this specific application that only exists in my part of the world, how do I make this work? And every single time one of those questions come up, something, some great discussion occurs, lots of information is passed, and it's stuff that you just simply could not get in hey, these are the rules that apply everywhere, because we're not writing books for you in your house where you live. All right.
Let me just say right now too, Rick, we're not starting this right now. I will stab you. I have a new bayonet mount on a new rifle. So there is that. And you know what was really great about this last class is we had a certain element of realism because we had to assign guys to watch shifts to prevent us from being overran by wild pigs. So there was a wild pig security detail. We ran an OP well into the night, working nods. And you know
You're saying
we really showed guys the impressive nature of thermals and the superpower that it is. Because we were detecting deer at, what did we shoot with the rangefinder? Almost 500.
Oh yeah,
across that field. So,
hey, did you see that video that what's our intelligence prep guy? What's his name again? I've lost his name.
Mike Shelby.
Mike Shelby. The video Mike Shelby posted on X the other day, with
Yeah.
the guy in the field, look with the pig right in front of him, and with the UAV.
I
with the
guarantee you,
thermals.
Don and I walked that close to some pigs on our hunt, and it was thick, and
Oh,
there
yeah.
was pig sign everywhere, but we didn't come across one. So,
Well, what the crazy thing is not only was he in that field with that pig, but he had a deer right there too. Yeah.
yeah.
And so
Well,
that's
I
think
can tell you
think-
this: when Don
ahead.
texted me that he was almost at camp, I threw my nods on and I stepped out. And you might not believe this, but pigs can be completely silent when they want to be, because I threw my nods on and flipped them down, and 10 of them were running within 20 feet of me, and I never heard them.
Yeah.
But I had nothing more lethal than a cell phone in my hand, so they lived.
Yeah. No, I think those pig hunts are good training for the for real events. So, and it also shows you how hard it is to find somebody who's trying to hide unless you have like an equalizer like thermals.
Yep.
All right, real quick, I want to do another plug for another member of the council here while we're at it. Patrons of Terror, book Blue Dawn book 5 is out. It is out on audiobook today. So we've got the audiobook queued up here. I've got a link in the chat here. If you want to check it out, you can use this link. If you buy it from this link, it puts a couple bucks in my pocket. So that
Quite frankly, I think the series just starts to get good here.
Oh,
Well, it couldn't have anything to do with the appearance of the purebloods and Captain Joe Dolio.
Captain Joe Dolio, who gets a several level promotion and several years deducted from his age. So
I like it. I like it. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the new book, it's out on audio. So I'm gonna, I've been very lucky dealing with the Land and Sea guys and with Blaine. Blaine's sent me some freebies, but I almost invariably always buy his stuff anyway because no matter whether it's Joe's books or Blaine's books or whatever, I want to support the guys that are doing amazing stuff. So I have purchased this as well. I used one of my credits, my Audible credits for this. So I recommend you guys check this out. Also, dedication in here to the council. Let's see if it says read sample, if it has the dedication in the sample, because usually they'll give you like the first couple pages. Let's see.
He actually gives some pretty good credit to NC Scout.
You skipped it. You went right past it.
Did it?
No, it's further down.
Yeah, I think it's further down.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's after the
This book was
acknowledgement.
dedicated.
Yeah, here we go. Dedication. This is the Patrons of Terror is dedicated to my comrades in arms at the Council on Future Conflicts channel. If you're not watching the channel on Rumble and YouTube, you are missing out on some prime material. Thanks to Scott, Joe, Stan, Kyler, Sean, and Fred for producing top-notch military, political, economic content. Sans the spin of mainstream media. Here's to another year of being insightful.
If you scroll up and look at that last paragraph, though, of the acknowledgments.
There we go. My thanks to my neighbor Jack for his technical advice, and Chad for his giving me the inspiration to stalwart Newburgh Airport and some specs on a helicopter. Thank you as well to Scott McCullough for his advice in dropping trees on tanks, and John Blair for his nuance in firing Abrams. Like, I didn't know that I was. Look at by name. Thank you, brother. And we've got NC Scout for information and signals intel for his book, The Guerrilla's Guide to Signals Intel. Let's see. That's amazing. That's very cool.
That's the community at work right there, right? So
absolutely. You bring attention to the folks that are helping. Kind of. Joe, I don't know how much stuff people have done for us that they absolutely didn't ask for us to do anything for them. And so it's just a real honor to be part of this.
A few weeks ago, I took offense at a guy on Twitter on the day of Donald Trump's conviction. I said that they're shoving this in your face right now, and It's whatever, hunch. But they're shoving this in your face right now as a humiliation ritual. And this guy kind of goes off and he's like, yeah, but who's going to lead us? When are you guys going to start actually leading? Listen, NC Scout and I are out there leading every single week, teaching a class somewhere. That's leading. Yeah. That's getting folks more aware, hooking people up and getting them together into teams and getting them to know they're like-minded folks in their own areas. I don't know what more leading you want other than me to maybe walk into the Capitol and get popped by the FBI.
Look, man, he wants you to get out there in like Chucks and pull out your NCO sword and form up a bunch of people in literal formation and, right face, forward march. All right, we're laying siege to something as though it's 1620 and you guys are going to go in there and bayonet charge the nearest thing that he doesn't like.
Listen, if I lead a charge, it may well be a bayonet charge.
Right, but probably not in formation like that.
Probably not in formation.
This is close order drill.
Yeah. Would you make them remove their collar,
defrock
before?
Yeah.
I highly recommend they put on their collars. The leathernecks were leathernecks for a reason and kept them alive. Right. But anyway, somebody once again over the weekend
Sharp told them to take it off.
Started that whole bayonets are outdated thing, and I challenged them to look up the last bayonet charge, and it wasn't nearly as long ago as you might think. So anyway.
Let's say to your various critics that think you're not leading this bayonet charge, right? If that's really who you are, that's really where you think we are, then pick up a rifle and defend your country. And since you won't, and since you're mostly waiting for somebody else to do it for you, shut up.
Yeah, honestly, if you're not willing, what those kind of people mean is I want someone else to do it so I don't have to. I don't want to put myself at risk. Listen, I live in Michigan, and the things I teach, if I taught them in Michigan, would get me arrested.
Well, here's another thing too. People have to remember, right? People have these kind of Hollywood ideas of what kind of this all means, right? And it's not. A lot of times, it's not the actual fighting and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the easy part. Generally stupid people, get themselves killed doing, right? What we're talking about is being resilient in the face of an authoritarian state, right? And sometimes that means sometimes that means gray man, which I know that gets a bad rap sometimes. And other times it means, just kind of surviving when things are bad, right? And surviving in that case means a lot of different things. And a lot of times it means not causing trouble out there, not falling for some of the bait that gets dropped out there, so it is, young men love to be hotheads, right? But old guys are mature, cool, and only fight when they know they can win.
Sun Tzu said, right? Knowing when to fight's the most important part, right? Simple.
Glow in the dark, you acquit yourself by following up with at least a funny super chat here. Glow in the dark for $5 says, have you ever had North Korean cuisine? It's to die for, I hear. When you have some North Korean food, it will be as if you didn't eat it all. Yes, well,
it's very light. Very light.
Other says the Donner Party also partook in North Korean cuisine before it was cool. And then he has a follow-up super chat here for $2. You took offense. Guess you're not good neighbors. Yeah, good fences make good neighbors. Yeah. Good fences make good neighbors. I agree with that. Hunter, good to see you in the chat there. All right, let's move on. Jumping into our segment number 1 here today, Egyptian soldiers. Let's see, let me open it. There we go. Got it open. My blood will go in vain. Egyptian soldiers say their country has failed Gaza. Conscripts in the Sinai first of all, conscripts, right? In the Sinai-Gaza border decry the Sisi government's silence on killing of its own soldiers and inaction towards Israeli atrocities. So clearly they have a point of view with this story, using the word atrocity, shows this as a slanted piece, but it's important to kind of see the way the news is being presented in other places.
Well, you can tell it's slanted by them saying up at the top, news, Israel's war on Gaza, as if the other side had no part in it, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Since the Israeli onslaught on neighboring Gaza in October, Egyptian soldier Mohammed Omar has felt helpless. Omar, 23, served as a patrolling officer in Egypt's North Sinai along the border with Gaza's Rafah over the past year. The region is part of the demilitarized zone, according to security pacts between Egypt and Israel, and only soldiers with light weapons are allowed to be deployed there. It is painful to know that you can help, but you are shackled and cannot help rescue your people from being slaughtered, he told the Middle East Eye while on leave at the port side, a destination for soldiers to rest before heading off to their units in the North Sinai. We've been watching and hearing how intense the Israeli bombing in Rafah is, and we see dozens of Palestinian families passing by the borders. Israel's war on Gaza has so far killed more than 37,000 Palestinians. Actually, that's not a crazy number. I've heard way higher. So it's always interesting seeing what numbers these biased outlets use. Because here's the bias, Joe. The bias comes in right here. Mostly women and children.
What are they basing that on, right? Show me a statistic that tells you this. They're just throwing it in there. It's just words.
Well, so we should know by now where they're getting it from. Hamas broadcasts a number, and then people reprint it as
without questioning it.
Right. As though Hamas is a particularly trustworthy source. Okay.
Or they get it from a journalist who is reporting from Gaza, never minding that the journalist also works for Hamas. So,
right.
Middle East Eye has met 5 Egyptian soldiers, including Omar, most of whom have demonstrated the dissatisfaction with the way the government is dealing with the war in Gaza and with the killing of their comrades on the border with Israel. The young soldier considered himself and his colleagues elite fighters trained to withstand harsh conditions and fight sophisticated targets.
Hold on. I have to say something before we just go right past it. Saying Israel killed their comrades on the border disregards the entire established chain of events from both sides.
Right.
Who fired first in the exchange between Egypt and the IDF?
Oh, it was Egypt.
Both sides, the Egyptians fired first. So,
I guess I could go ahead and go into the commentary part of this story because we've kind of basically got the key bits here. Is that I have no doubt with all the bias that you can see, whoever wrote the story, the kernel of truth here that I think is kind of worth noting is that I think there are Egyptian soldiers that do believe that they are dissatisfied with what's happening with their government's response to Israel. But what it's also telling is that the Egyptian government is not really upset that Israel is doing what they're doing. There's a reason why the Jordanian government doesn't seem that upset with what's going on in Gaza.
Hey, who killed Anwar Sadat?
Palestinians.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the kind of the reading between the lines in the story, right? I'm sure that some lower class Egyptian soldier may feel some kinship with Muslims that are being killed by Jews, right?
Some might say a Muslim brotherhood.
Exactly right. The people who wanted to kill Sisi, oddly enough. And Sisi ended up overthrowing the Muslim Brotherhood in order to come to power, if you remember your recent Egyptian history. And so, this entire project is illustrative of some of the undercurrents that are going on in these countries. Leadership and probably a significant portion of the population who is tired of the BS from the Palestinians, who are basically allowing Israel the space they need to take care of their problem. And then some affected lower populations that are persuaded by the propaganda of organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood, like Hamas, like some of the Palestinian dissident organizations. Hezbollah is another good example of that. So I think it shows you there is some kind of there's not, each of these countries are not individual, right? They're not a monolith. There are different threads in each country, and I
You know
think
what
that
I
we
think
can see
is hilarious
unrest from that.
is looking at this picture. They wear what appears to be a fairly effective desert camouflage pattern, but they go with the whole Middle Eastern penchant for gold scroll work all over their uniforms that defeats the entire purpose of the effective camouflage. Thank God for the Arab fighting male.
Yeah, it's what I like are the guys, who have like shoulder boards and and epaulets and all this kind of stuff with red, and it's like yeah, I think it's funny. Let's see. There goes the tones. All right. Oh, he's got work to do. Enjoy. See you later, brother. All right. So that's that's one of the stories that I wanted to pick on as we kind of go through what's going on. Because there's another story. Let's see. Let me get the link is weird here. Okay, here we go. We've covered the recent drama surrounding the pier operation. The Gaza Pier. They set it up, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, wow, it wasn't so great because it was stranded on a beach, up the coast. It fell apart, and and we've had soldiers getting hurt because of working 18-hour days. So there's been some controversy around this. We had the Israelis using it as a safe haven for conducting operations, and that when they rescued those hostages. So the pier has been this kind of ongoing, I don't know, drama maybe is the best word for it. U.S. pier for Gaza aid is failing and could be dismantled early. Officials hope the looming deadline will pressure Israel to open more land routes into the territory, which is facing extreme levels of hunger. All right. Well, let's see what the New York Times has to say about it. The headline.
Can I point out that the hunger
go ahead.
predates the Israeli push into Gaza? They were hungry beforehand because Hamas has always stolen the food and then resold it. Always.
Well, in the other thing that's interesting here is absolutely it's not a lack of food. It's a lack of people actually willing to stand up to Hamas and receive the food because Hamas.
Can we stop pretending that this is at all related to Hamas or Gaza? This happens pretty literally everywhere we deliver humanitarian aid. Every single place that we drop humanitarian aid, the local warlord comes by and is like, all right, so all my guys are going to get the humanitarian aid.
It's the story of Ethiopia in the 80s and Somalia in the 90s, right?
Right. Yeah. Every single time.
It's almost like food is a weapon. Huh.
Well, this kind of goes back to the 4 factors of societal, friction, right? It's energy, it's food, it's governance. So there are these factors that you see in all these conflicts, and the more you have affecting a society, the more likely that society is to collapse into conflict. All right. So in the month since it was attached to the shoreline, the pier has been in service only about 10 days. The rest of the time, it was being repaired after rough seas broke it apart, detached to avoid further damage, or paused because of security concerns. The pier was never meant to be more than a stopgap measure. No, it was meant to be a PR operation is what it was. Administration
and it failed at even that.
Yeah, because I don't think there's anybody in America that thinks this is doing like, oh, that's great.
Well, right, but now is the time for spin because the PR move went bad, and so it was just a temporary thing. That's all we were doing, right? It definitely wasn't to make us look good.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. The pier was never meant to be more than a stopgap measure, while the Biden administration pushed Israel to allow more food and other supplies into Gaza through land routes a far more efficient way to deliver relief. But even the modest goals for the pier are likely to fall short. Some American military officials say when the pier was conceived, health authorities were warning that the territory was on the precipice of famine. In recent weeks, Israel was given relief organizations greater access, but the groups say that the situation remains dire. Excuse me. Let's see, remains dire. The Biden administration initially predicted it would be September before emergencies would make the pier inoperable, but the military officials are now warning aid organizations that the project could be dismantled as early as next month, a looming deadline that officials say they hope will pressure Israel to open more ground routes. Now, ground routes, I think, are actually viable, but Israel is just not motivated at this point.
Okay.
To really
So-
to do that.
Even next month is a bit of a fudge language here. You mean in a week? You mean a week and 3 days?
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, I mean, this pier has just been kind of, I don't know. I hate to say it's a larger metaphor for military operations under the current administration. I'm not going to give my opinion on what I think about all that. I'll leave that up to you. But at the same time, I mean, it's just, these are public failures that, can't help but do anything other than damage our reputation when our reputation is kind of all we have, in this kind of world. Because you don't want, Joe, you don't want to fight a war if you could avoid a war, right? The best battles are the ones that never fire a shot, right? Going back to the Sun Tzu, right? You want to do things that are efficient when it comes to conflict. And the most efficient conflicts are those you can avoid because people are afraid to get into a fight with you. But when they see this kind of stuff, it can't help but damage that reputation and make people question whether you're able to be competent even in more challenging circumstances.
Let me be more direct about that.
Go ahead.
Before you move on and let Joe the expert give
real quick. Let me do the super chat real quick. Before, thank God the adults are back in charge.
Yeah. I just want to say that I'm sure the people of Taiwan are feeling incredibly confident in the U.S.'s sea lift capabilities at the moment.
Yeah, right. They're like, hold on, maybe can I switch my vote? Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, Joe, just talk real quick about like when you've been involved in operations, like, when you were in Panama and you did some of this stuff, Americans, when they showed up, people knew they meant business. There was a cachet to the reputation that we had. And it was upheld.
Couldn't run fast enough, right?
Right. That's right. And now let's be honest, there was a lot of publicity came out of Panama, but really for the throughout the 90s, what really secured our reputation was the apparent effectiveness of everything we did in Desert Storm, right? I mean, it
I'll
showed.
Also point out that I know a bunch of folks were talking about Mohammed Farah Aidid in the chat when we were talking about the food. Let's remember, Farah Aidid ran when the U.S. Marines landed in force and told his people, "Go underground and hide until the Marines leave. We don't want to fight the U.S. Marines." There's a lot to be said for reputation, and there's a lot to be said for apparent power. We are a long, long ways past that, right? So,
Don, let me ask you this. I mean, this kind of takes the topic a little further afield, but I want to go there. Some of the things that we've been seeing recently coming out of Ukraine, right, have damaged the military's kind of standing. Some of our silver bullets in the fight, the artillery fight, are getting some people say nothing but good things. Like, for instance, ATACMs and HIMARS have come out, smelling like a rose. But, we've been hearing stories about, Excalibur rounds that are not landing where they should be landing because of, jamming. So talk a little bit about that and how that impacts our reputation.
So this is so insane, right? The people since Vietnam, the lesson that the U.S. military has learned is he who has the better technology wins, right? And you can hear that echoed in generals talking. If you go listen to their speeches, you can hear that echoed in like the SOG guys talk about, well, the only reason that we were beating the Vietnamese, who were the best in the world, is that we had better technology. And I'm not here to tell you that technology plays no role in victory. It obviously does.
Yeah.
However, if you are reliant entirely on technology and not skill, you get Ukraine, right? And the problem that we have is not that any of the equipment we have is terrible, right? There's years out now, probably because I'm an autistic canon weirdo. I can explain to you plenty of ways to stop an artillery convoy, drop rounds on the enemy with timely and accurate fire, and be back on the trucks before they could even get around back at you. Now, if what we're doing is just telling them, like, well, if you put the cannons down and then just shoot these GPS guided munitions, you automatically win, then you're going to get what we're seeing. And the primary problem that this is going to cause us is that other people around the world are watching these artillery engagements and going, oh, well, the Americans want to beat the Russians. And so presumably they're giving the Ukrainians the best they have to give. And it's not actually effective.
But in some cases, we probably aren't giving the best we have.
And to a mortal certainty, we are not, right? Make no mistake, one of the big pushes while I was in was to make everything digital, right? Because technology wins wars. So the more that we do technology-based things, the more likely we are to win. And, the enlisted side was effectively there to tell you the entire time, this is not how you win wars. Okay, it's very cool, and cool is great. But at the same time, when I can't get power because I'm 40 clicks from the nearest thing that has power, maybe the capability to do this out of a book or off of, manual gunnery is the thing that's actually going to make me win. The thing that says you can't shut me down no matter what you do, other than
degraded operations.
Exactly. And it is pretty clear that we are not doing that in Ukraine. And this absurd love of the Excalibur round is the best method that that's true.
Yeah, one of the problems is actually, let me get the super chat. It's $10, so he's telling us to shut up. So Lance Corporal Veteran for $10 says, who's to say do nothing won't be the continued foreign policy independent of Trump if he's elected. He can pound the desk. It won't matter if they don't obey him. Yeah, I think Trump is. I feel Trump is not going back to silver bullets, by the way. Trump is not a political silver bullet, but at the same time, I think he has learned some lessons. That said, he will always be Trump, and Trump brings along a certain ego and kind of self-importance that you just don't see with a lot of other politicians. So we'll see how that works out. If I had to go with it, with which one's foreign policy I have more confidence in, it would be a Trump administration. But then again, that's just me.
Sure, but what Lance Corporal Veteran there is highlighting, though not specifically saying, is that if I'm a foreign adversary and Trump says, my button is bigger and it works, and Milley comes out 2 years later and goes, yeah, we made sure that could never happen, right? Then you can't have that foreign policy because because the apparatus won't allow you to actually enact your foreign policy. Right. I agree with that. And so, as much as Trump relies on speak brashly and carry a big stick, there's no big stick if that the upper echelons of the military are going to go, when it's time to invade, they're just going to go, yeah, we didn't get that order.
Hey, did we ever get out of Syria?
Yeah.
No, we're still in Syria. No, we're still in Syria.
Weird.
We're still in Syria.
Weird.
Hey, hey, real quick, I want to just go back to that point on the artillery and degraded operations. And
Sure.
Don, I wanted to throw this at you, right? So we have pretty much set up our cannon artillery at this point, and I'm speaking mostly from an Army context, and I don't know this from the standpoint of being an expert. It's kind of like, I read the same publicly released information that everybody else does.
Right.
Is that we've essentially designed our cannon-based artillery to be very effective with the Excalibur round. But the problem is, if we go to old school dumb steel on target, right? We just don't have the tubes to really mass fires the way that you have to be able to do, like we've seen Russia do in some of these attacks, like what they were doing around Bakhmut, what they did around. What's the other city that just fell, Joe? That was held out for so long on the Ukrainian side. The one on the one that was the recent one that just fell. I don't know why.
You got to be more specific than that. A whole bunch of them just fell that held out.
No, the big one that was right. It's near Donetsk. It's just to the north west of Donetsk that held out. Avdiivka. Yeah. And that was another one that the massive fire was a key component of that collapse. Right. The being able to shoot lots of dumb steel bullets into a grid square within a short period of time. We just aren't equipped to do that anymore. Now, DPICM is a different story. We would probably use that heavily, but at the same time, that's good against certain types of targets and not against others.
So we would probably not use DPICM. As much as that is a super great tactical decision, it is not a good political decision. And that is unironically why we don't shoot DPICM. It has nothing to do with whether or not it is an effective round. It has everything to do with the failure rate of the grenades that come out of DPICM and them being above 0. Now that might sound absurd to you, but that is quite literally the word passed down. I sat in a room full of master sergeants, being one of their notes bitch once upon a time. And the word they were passing at a battalion level to E8 and above was, we don't shoot DPICM because the grenades have a failure rate. And that creates bad PR, because you leave a live grenade effectively on the ground and some kid goes and throws it, and then him and his friends die, and then Americans killed civilians, right? And so in the world of massing fires, that is yet another political decision that is affecting war in a very serious way. Our lessons from GWAT on artillery is effectively that you never need more than 2 guns for anything. Now, that is, if you were an artilleryman, that is self-evidently not true, right? We're going to throw a bunch of rounds into a grid square is called sweep and zone. That is the name of the mission. And it is simply impossible to do. Now, God forbid there's another FTC guy out there listening to this. Don, I could plot a mission that says, we could get the entire grid square with 2 guns. Sure, but it's going to take those guns like 8 hours, right? And so it is not an effective mission.
Well, I would just plant a spiral sheath, and that's where I tune out.
Well, so that's another thing that you just simply can't do with 2 guns. And so, without getting ridiculously autistic, the reality is your capabilities with 2 guns are degraded to a mission called immediate suppression, which is, I am in serious danger of being overrun right now. Give me rounds right this second. And that is why the lower limit is 2 guns. And it is the only acceptable mission per most officers, effectively. When you call for help, that is the only help you're allowed to call for. And that means that, that question that you're asking, hey, we're laying siege to a city. We need 250 rounds. The brass of the entire U.S. military thinks that is not an improvable mission. So it doesn't matter if we have the tubes or not. We could have 1 trillion 777s or 105s hanging out. And if you said, give me battery 6, which is 18 rounds, right? Or I'm sorry, 36 rounds, not 18.
36, yeah.
And so, you said, hey, look, I'm laying siege to this thing that is very hard target. Give me 36 rounds. By the time that those rounds get to you, you will be very lucky to get battery 2, right? Which is only 12 rounds.
Yeah.
And that is very much, but when we fire artillery, it's a big explosion, and that might mean civilian casualties. And the lack of civilian casualties is more important than any objective on the battlefield. And so there's not a way to answer your question that isn't, this is a political decision. It does not matter whether or not we have the actual capability. It will never get used.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so we've got a lot of work to do in both probably force generation and in rebluing tactics. So, and we're learning these lessons in real time. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Let's see. And speaking of people who are going to need big war tactics, I think, as bad as it is, no, we're doing the Hezbollah story here. Yeah. The one right above that one. This one here. Yep. Israel warns of prospect of all-out war after Hezbollah publishes video of military and civilian sites. And so Hezbollah flies a drone right over Haifa, right, and shows high definition footage of both military and civilian targets in northern Israel. Yeah, you got to play the ad, I guess, right? Oh, it's so stupid. I'll read a little bit of this while we're queuing up the video, and you're gonna have to mute the video too, by the way. Israel warned Hezbollah on Tuesday of the prospect of all-out war after the Lebanese militant group published a 9-minute video purportedly taken by a drone showing Israeli military and civilian locations in several Israeli cities. We're getting very close to a moment of deciding to change the rule of the game against Hezbollah and Lebanon, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz said in a statement on X. In an all-out war, Hezbollah will be destroyed and Lebanon severely beaten, he added. Parts of the Hezbollah footage filmed in daytime claim to show Kariot, a cluster of highly populated residential cities north of Israeli city Haifa and 28 kilometers south of the Lebanese border. Look at it. Oil storages. These are all targets. Parts of Hezbollah footage filmed in the daytime. Other parts claim to show a military complex near Haifa belonging to Israeli weapons manufacturer Rafael, including Iron Dome batteries, missile storage sites, and radar sites, and military boats, ships, and oil storage depots in the port of Haifa. The publication of the video follows months of intensifying border conflict attacks between Hezbollah and Israel in the wake of the October 7th Hamas attack and ensuing military campaign by the Israeli Defense Force in Gaza. Now, Joe, I guarantee they saw this thing on some radar, but it's kind of like it's still hard to see these kind of small drones based on what their size and the material they're made of, right? It seems like these small drones are still a problem, even for somebody like Israel, who is very vigilant.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the drones are such a prolific thing now. You have to be certain what type of drone you're dealing with. If it's a small commercial type drone, you can't just shoot it down because who knows who owns it.
Right.
That's the biggest threat involved here. Ironically, Don and I just sat through a guy using his small civilian drone with great video, but it was attacked by a swarm of birds, by the way.
That was kind of hilarious.
It was hilarious and interesting to watch. Sparrows will legit try to take down a drone and like violently. So anyway, but the point is you can't ever tell what a drone's purpose and intent is unless it's a clearly military style drone. But in that region of the world, there are so many people flying drone missions over Israeli territory that they're probably hesitant to just shoot it down because they don't want to shoot down an American drone or a French drone or a British drone that came off of some of the ships they have sitting just off the coast. It's a very interesting piece of airspace. So I don't know what the answer is, but they've got to stop these drone overflights.
Yeah, I think I recently saw basically a tender offer by Israeli military saying that we've got basically an unlimited budget to learn how to shoot down smaller drones. Because they're good with shooting out certain things, like with the Iron Dome. Those are usually rockets and artillery and things like that. But their big problems are these smaller drones, and and the problem is, and we've talked about this with Jim specifically, but we've talked about it more generally, is that there are these small drones that cost what, $200 to make, and you can almost field an infinite number of them. So that becomes a huge threat when it costs you $100,000 to create a system to shoot down, to take one shot, right? And how many shots do you have, right? So it becomes this kind of diminishing returns problem. And clearly the obvious answer is either guns, which you could do now, gun systems, right? Or, the high-tech futuristic laser system that's just not there yet. So, Watcher, I know this is something that you've kind of looked into a lot. This is a threat that Hezbollah is presenting to Israel. And I think eventually Israel is in the take no shit kind of mood these days. And I understand why. And Hezbollah are bad guys, right? This isn't like they're kind of okay. No, these are bad guys. So they're eventually going to push Israel, and Israel's not going to take any of their shit anymore. And unfortunately, that's going to be a different fight than what we're seeing in Gaza. Not Alan Rogers, member for 26 months. Thank you for that long-term support. Appreciate you. Figured I'd ask, has anybody seen my uncle? He's Chechen, got drunk, wandered off while we were having dinner at the Pick and Pig. I'm really worried.
Yeah, he was last seen in a Utilities One contractor hat, and I don't know what happened to him.
That's right. He probably ran into some pissed off veteran and got buried in the pig farm. He was eating pig, and then he became a pig. Alrighty. All right. So this last one kind of goes to that question of foreign policy, right? And the Biden versus Trump kind of the directions that we could, So this is Kristi Noem. It's like maybe we've heard of her before. She's not a nobody. Let's see. As the White House presses Israel to agree to a ceasefire that would allow terrorist groups Hamas to regroup and attack Israel again in the future, it's worth taking stock of the mess Joe Biden has made of the Middle East, especially compared to Donald Trump's record. And so I want to skip down here. Because a lot of this is sales pitch for political stuff. I just want to kind of get to the point where they're talking about the differences. So she kind of says what's been going on for the last 4 years. We've been talking about it a lot, so there's no need. She contrasts that with Trump, which he talks about the Abraham Accords, peace agreements, no new wars, all that kind of stuff. So what would a Trump administration foreign policy look like? And that's kind of what I'm interested in. A Trump doctrine for the Middle East would reset U.S. foreign policy to a natural blend of America first, peace through strength, and the art of the deal. First, the Trump doctrine means restoring deterrence with Iran, which can never get a nuclear weapon on or threaten the U.S. or its partners and interests. Iran can't be dealt with solely on its nuclear file. It is the key to any regional solution, including for peace with Israel and both Lebanon and Syria. Absent a resolution, there will be more October 7th events, more attacks on American forces and partners, and the threat of nuclear weapons hanging over the region, which Trump cannot accept. Thoughts on that, real quick, guys? I don't want to split the pig too much here, but where are you guys at with deterrence with Iran?
I don't think we can anymore.
Yeah, there's literally no
the genie
way
might be out of the bottle, right? Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, you can't deter them. They will not be deterred. they're not afraid of us at all. So
Well, the irony is that if Trump had if he had won in 2020, or if he had been allowed to take power in 2020, I think you may have been able to do something with deterrence, because you had had 8 years of solid kind of not supporting Iran. The problem is what's happened in the last 3 years, and the weak position we are now in. I kind of agree with you guys. The genie's out of the bottle when it comes to a nuclear Iran. They're just a matter of weeks to get there. Second, the America is losing its investment in Iraq to Iran. Trump said in 2016 that he would not let Iran take Iraq's oil, but that's exactly what happened in Biden's watch, as Iraq's energy resources are being divided up by Iran, Russia, and China. Almost 4,500 American lives were lost in Iraq, and trillions of dollars have been spent on the war. These lives and dollars have been squandered by the current administration. Let's see. Iraq reserves are immense and might exceed even that of Saudi Arabia. A Trump administration would put energy security first in Iraq and the Middle East and create even more opportunities for the U.S. businesses, including in natural gas, which is cleaner than oil, and in which case the United States would be a world leader. That's something to be said for that. One of the things that I've always said when it comes to kind of the underpinnings of my view of what should be important for U.S. foreign policy. One of them is energy policy, right? Because it's not that necessarily that the America gets oil from Iraq and Saudi Arabia, but many of our allies and the rest of the world does. And so clear access to energy reserves, I think, is very important for, U.S. interest to go forward. So that means, we don't necessarily need to get in wars over here. And in fact, I think we should pull out of most of these regions, but we still need to have friends and have some sort of a peace through strength kind of a policy. As far as that goes, guys, where are you guys at with just our policy towards, Iraq, these natural interests in the region?
I don't think you get to split the hair the way that you're trying, right?
Yeah.
If we're gonna hold interest over this and demand, various peace and that sort of thing, then we don't get to pull out of the region. And the short answer to that is, if we pulled out of the region, presumably NATO or some specific ally is going to be enforcing our interests there, and there is no one who is going to do that. 0 people. So it's on us, or we leave and say, let it burn.
Don't you think really the big problem has been the kind of, all of our allies tend to be kind of at each other's throats, like, so the acrimony between Israel and Saudi Arabia, for instance, right? And so the Abraham Accords started that kind of ball rolling in the right direction that would basically have the Gulf Council become allied with Israel. And if that were the case, then wouldn't that kind of create a block that would allow us to pull back a little bit, don't you think?
Well, so the thing that makes that possible is the rest of Trump foreign policy doctrine, which is, I'm right here, you are touchable, so behave or I will touch you. And if that is taken away, then why is specifically Saudi Arabia going to be interested in staying allied with Israel? Why do they care? And the answer is that they don't, right? So you don't get to both say, hey, I'm going to leave you kids to play, by the way, nobody fight, and actually get Abraham Accords enforced. And the only way that you could split that hair is the first person who breaks this deal, we're going to invade, we're going to turn your country upside down. We're just going to break everything and leave a little sign in our wake that says, when I say you agreed to a deal, you agreed to a deal, right? And there is a simple reality that is not going to happen. There is no time we are going to turn the entire U.S. military loose to just go in and break things. We've spent the last 50 years telling the U.S. military that, you must be very gentle in this war thing. You have to be very specific, right? And so at this point, even if we wanted to do that, it is a military that is at least 2 generations of NCOs and officers that think war is run by the idea that you can't fire artillery into a town, that you can't call kilos on a mosque
right.
without a general approving it, right?
Or a lawyer approving even better.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, Joe, what's your take on that? Just kind of, and I think Don actually brings up a great point. It's the culture of the military and how it prosecutes conflict. Just generally, do you think that's a kind of a major barricade that we've put up against potentially being successful in the world?
I think that it's a misconception. I think that we're probably the last country that holds itself to unreasonable standards when it comes to some of these things. But I also think that people have a misconception of our compliance to it. For example, we have leveled mosques intentionally when they sorely deserved it, right?
No, absolutely.
And we don't actually abide by as many of the high standards that people automatically assume we do. For example, we have never signed either of the 2 newest Geneva protocols that relate specifically to civil conflict. There's a reason for that. They're perfectly willing to commit war crimes to kill you when you resist them.
Yes.
Just interesting misconceptions people have about our compliance with quote unquote international law, which is not a thing.
So it's worth noting that the differentiation here matters a lot based on who's in office at the time, right? In that sense, but the officer corps is of the opinion that the Obama doctrines on war is correct, and so you're going to end up. I mean, I think everybody is in general agreement that some purge of the officer corps is necessary. And it absolutely would be if you wanted to take the military and say, Saudi Arabia, for the sake of this discussion, broke the agreement between Saudi and Israel. And so what we're going to do is land you guys anywhere in Saudi and say, just break things until we tell you to stop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my kind of take on this is that all these rules that we've created kind of go out the window as soon as we find ourselves suffering real casualties, right? As soon as the first general officer gets fired because all of a sudden there's, within a 48, 72 hour period, there are 1,000 dead Americans, right? A Task Force Smith kind of situation, right? That wakes us up. That's the kind of thing that would then say, oh, the rules have changed, right? And part of it is kind of, you get that, you get a taste of blood and you want to, kind of repay the enemy. But on the other hand, you start realizing that in order to be successful, we have to change the way we're playing the game. Now, I have every confidence that the American military man can make that switch, but it's going to take a little more time for the civilians out there to catch up. And oh, by the way, all the gruesome stuff you're seeing come out of the Ukraine, you're going to see it come out of wherever we fight too. And there's going to, and the dead Americans, it's not going to just be dead Americans after the battle. You're going to watch them die on video. And this will be, I mean, one of the things the way I look at warfare is probably just a little different because I live in the realm of information operations and, in the internet and, the information domain. If you don't think that this, watching the Ukrainians chase down individual Russian soldiers in high def and then drop multiple grenades on them until they're essentially blown apart. If you don't think that that's not going to happen to the U.S. in our next conflict, you're absolutely bananas. Everybody's going to try to do it. Everybody's going to want to be the first people to get, dead Americans hiding in a foxhole,
Let me say 2 things on that. Number one, you're absolutely right. Another thing is that we have this misconception, as Don pointed out, that we can bomb people into oblivion. how's that been working out in Yemen? It hasn't, right?
Yeah.
We're hitting empty positions. They take off running, they go hide in a cave, they come back out when the bombs stop. And the last thing, Pinochet, what about the American military women, our new frontline force? Dude, drafted does not equal frontline. And it hasn't even passed, and it's probably not going to. So
Yeah,
we're not
but
drafting women.
That said, there are women in the infantry now. So, not a lot, but they do exist there. And I think when you start seeing those videos come out of American women dying in conflict, you're going to see a change in.
I think that we should take the lesson from the Russians of World War II. Sure, women can serve in frontline units, but what the Russians found was that men then do outrageous and ridiculous things to try to keep the women in the infantry unit safe, putting themselves at risk, and it leads to more casualties than were necessary. And if anyone knows about lots of casualties, it was the Russians in World War II.
They are the authority.
They are the authority because they took about 3 deaths to everybody else's 1. So
yeah, that's exactly right. They invented the term meat grinder on the Eastern Front. I guess it was the Western Front for them. All right.
Worth noting that the Marine Corps learned the exact same thing in about 2010 when they were originally proposing that we put women in the front line. They did this massive study on how women in infantry units goes, and the short answer was you're going to lose like 3 guys to 1 because the guys are going to make ridiculous moves to save the women's life, and equally that unit cohesion goes out the window immediately once you put even a small number of women in a frontline unit.
By the way,
it's been a problem in the military police for a very long time because women are allowed in the military police MOS, and the Marine Corps uses their military police way closer to the front line than anyone else. So,
real quick, I just want to acknowledge Janine Rogers' use of the Mike Tyson quote here, and it absolutely is apt to what we're talking about. We've got all these great plans for how we're going to fight until we get punched in the face. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face. Exactly right. All right, let's move on to our next topic here, and we're gonna have to do a speed run on this because we've gone a little long. Russia's Putin and North Korea's Kim to sign mutual defense pact. Going back to the North Korean peninsula here. Essentially, Putin has showed up in North Korea, and there's pictures of Putin all over Pyongyang.
We should share that meme that I dropped here in the private chat at the very beginning of the show right now.
If we have,
Harvey Wallbanger status one up there.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Let's see what it says. Oh, yeah.
This is appropriate for right now.
Yeah, I can't even see the post above it. Yes, why the great president so upset? For years, he wanted to destroy America, and Joe Biden beat him to it. That's funny. All right, Putin's pledge overhauls. So anyway, Putin showed up, and he's making promises. Putin's pledge overhauls Russia's entire post-Soviet policy on North Korea, just as the United States and its allies try to gauge how far Russia could deepen support for the only country to have tested nuclear weapons this century. On his first visit to Pyongyang since July 2000, Putin explicitly linked Russia's deepening ties to North Korea to the West's growing support for Ukraine, and said Moscow could develop military and technical cooperation with Pyongyang. After talks, they signed a comprehensive strategic partnership pact, which Putin said included mutual defense clauses in the case of aggression against either country. So this is absolutely something that has been brought along because of the actions of the West and how we have essentially approached, direct support for Ukraine during this, basically a live war. We've become I don't want to say co-conspirators, but we have been become co-combatants.
Co-belligerents is actually the legal term.
Yeah, Kobol. Yeah, that's right. And it's, you can argue that point, whatever. I'm not interested in those semantic arguments. I'm interested in the ones that create actual negative effects for for us, and that is, whether it's the money that we're wasting sending, that gets pilfered before it gets to the soldier in Ukraine, or the actions that Russia decides to take because of sanctions and all this kind of stuff. What this will do is this partnership between Russia and North Korea will strengthen North Korea. The technology transfers, that they can bring to Russia, Russia can bring to North Korea. The manufacturing, so North Korea is a small little country, and they're one of the poorest countries in the world. Well, okay, it doesn't matter, because they've absolutely focused their GDP on the manufacture of weapons, and it doesn't. And okay, so their weapons are not sophisticated. Well, that's true. There's a 50% failure rate reportedly of their short and medium range ballistic missiles that Russia's already fired. Well, guess what? That's 50% more that Russia got from North Korea that they didn't have already. So this is, it's kind of like an argument without a distinction. Also,
if you're pricing it, that they're roughly half the price of regular missiles, so I guess that makes them like regular.
Probably
price.
less. Now, North Korea has spent a lot of their technological know-how on, okay, we can't make the best missiles in the world, so let's make the most cost-effective for the effect, right? So if we have a 50% failure rate, then we just make 50% more missiles, and then that's how you overcome that. Don, we were talking about artillery earlier. Okay, so what if they're what is a CEP, right? That's the kind of what is that? What's the term for accuracy of a round, right? It's
probably air and range deflection.
Anyway, so it doesn't matter if that's really high if you have a whole lot of rounds to shoot, because then you just kind of increase your rate of fire, or increase your weight of fire, in order to make up for the lack of, quality control. And you know what? So what? We're a communist country. If we have more short rounds, who cares, right? If we have more, bad bags of ammo that make gun tubes blow up, so what, right? It's just
so the gun tubes thing is a problem, right? And so that's not the failure rate you want. You want failure to detonate, because the way you get around failure to detonate is in fact just, well, we know these rounds suck, so just double the fire order, right? Who cares? And if you're getting as much of these things as you want, then yeah, that's precisely what you do. If you're blowing up tubes, you're reducing capability to double the rounds, per fire order. And so if what they're doing is creating rounds that just don't detonate, that is the hard part of the round, technically speaking, to create, because it's a timer, or it's a impact based, and there's a little safety that is involved. So as long as you've got the safety mastered, yeah, just make 1 million of these things and shoot them. Whether don't get me wrong, it is better if your round explodes, but if catching 100 pounds of steel in composition B is not good for your health, all right, even if it doesn't blow up.
I can attest to the fact that I have not seen with my own eyes, but I have seen pictures of rounds that did not explode, but they were right on target, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, we had a one of my FOs called me up after a field op and went, yeah, you guys shot a dead round, but it hit the tank and collapsed the top of the turret.
Right. So, by the way, I just want to say I was right. It's circular area of probability. I couldn't remember what that stood for, but I remember the acronym was correct. CEP.
It's a question of which side of artillery you're shooting. That is an FO's answer, and probably air and range deflection is an FTC guy's answer.
Yeah, well, nobody cares what the FTC says as long as they do their job.
That's a fact.
Yeah, think of the FO as the artillery salesman downrange. I have many products to sell you. Which would you like to try first?
Exactly.
All right. Yeah, like I said, I need to speed run this section. So anyway, this is going to be something that we see more of. And once again, I'll go back to my prediction. I think this will give North Korea more bluster, but it will actually decrease the likelihood of critical failures occurring along the DMZ and along the MDL with South Korea, because it gives that security to Russia. I mean, it gives security to North Korea, not just because they're going to get weapons and things like that, but they'll get steady supply of fuel. They'll get more food, wheat and other products coming from Russia. So this is a huge boon for North Korea in a lot of different ways that we take maybe America takes for granted. So, I think we'll see more from this. We could skip that tweet there. That's just video of Putin and Kim Jong-un. And then North Korea is not the only place he's going. So he's going to Vietnam, and so we're gonna get all upset over two countries having their own foreign policy. That doesn't do exactly what we want. The U.S. sharp rebuke of Vietnam for hosting Putin later this week was ridiculous. Vietnam will still keep the U.S. close, since it considers to be its only realistic counterweight to China, and the latter names South China Sea, that Hanoi calls its East Sea, all while arming itself to the teeth with Russian weaponry just in case a conflict breaks out by miscalculation. The U.S. embassy in Hanoi reacted angrily to the news that Vladimir Putin would visit Vietnam later this week. One of the spokespeople told Reuters that no country should give Putin a platform to promote his war of aggression and otherwise allow him to normalize his atrocities. If he were able to travel freely, it could normalize Russia's blatant violations of international law. Now, this is interesting because I think the Biden administration has to do this, right? Because this keeps it consistent with their own policies throughout the world. That being said, ultimately, I don't think Vietnam cares. I think they'll host Putin. They're in realpolitik mode, right? They'll balance with the U.S. against China, but at the same time, they'll be buddy-buddy with Putin because they want to get weapons from him. They want to get a lot of the same things that probably North Korea is now getting out of them. So, guys, turn it over to you. What's your kind of take on this? And do you think that this really is this a mountain out of a molehill?
The real takeaway of this is that the administration is doing precisely what it has been doing in foreign policy, which is exporting impotent rage.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. If you look back since, say, about 1950s, what country has invaded more countries than the U.S.? There isn't one, right? And we're over here saying that Putin's bad because he invaded another country. Afghanistan and Iraq are like, hey man, remember us? And even Somalia to a lesser extent, and several other little places we've bumped our nose into. Assad's like, hey, but I still got American troops on my soil. The most direct correlation to the Ukraine war for us is Syria. And we're there, and we absolutely flat out refuse to leave because it's a pretty dang lucrative gig for us. So I don't think we have a lot of standing to say it's ridiculous to allow Putin in places when Joe Biden goes places. So I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying that we don't really have the moral high ground here, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think that's a legitimate kind of criticism of this. I mean, ultimately, I think, from the sake of consistency, I think it makes sense, but I don't think it ultimately means anything.
I'll also point out that if Sergei Lavrov gives a statement, nations pay attention. When Anthony Blinken makes a statement, they're like, who? So
Yeah. And I think we'll see. I think you'll see a lot of countries if they perceive a likelihood that President Trump will win the race. You'll start to see countries buck against the current administration's foreign policy in anticipation of potential changes in foreign policy. That being
speaking
said,
of that, I made a prediction on Twitter yesterday that I want to point out. A new poll has come out that said that Donald Trump's chances of winning the election are 72%. And my prediction was, y'all know what happens next, right? And I posted a picture of the guy from Shooter who said, still got the shovel.
yeah.
Well,
We also
that's what comes next. They're never going to let him win.
Well, I was going to say, I remember when Hillary Clinton had an 89% chance on election night of 2016 of winning, and we saw what happened there. So never count your chickens before they hatch.
No, I think they've learned their lesson. They are never going to let that happen again.
Well, no. My point is we shouldn't, get complacent and just assume that, we got it. No, we don't got it.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at this last one. So going back to, we were just talking about this consistency of U.S. foreign policy, right? And so we're going to Jake Sullivan, this absolute buffoon of a man. Jake Sullivan greenlights Ukraine cross-border attacks beyond Kharkiv region. Joe, I thought that's kind of something the president would do, or maybe or the Secretary of State, or maybe the Secretary
Literally
of Defense.
Anyone but him, right?
But no,
it's not a director, right?
Exactly right. This is the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, sir, we're going to do it. Oh, okay, all right. Turn me in the right direction so I can.
Do I still get ice cream at 8:45?
That's right. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has said that authorization for the Ukraine to use American weapons for cross-border attacks extends not just to the Kharkiv region, but also into other Russian regions as well, further escalating Biden's initial green light of such offensive operations. Blinken, in a Monday PBS interview, told NewsHour's Nick Chafin, this is not about geography, but it's about common sense, and expanded the parameters for use of NATO-supplied missiles. Watch the exchange. Well, I'm curious if it means NATO-supplied missiles or U.S.-supplied missiles, because those are two different things.
But to Putin, they're the same thing.
Let's see. This is Sullivan. It extends to everywhere that Russian forces are coming across the border from the Russian side to Ukraine side and try to take additional Ukrainian territory. So that would include the Sumy region. That happened in Kharkiv. We have seen initial indicators that Russia has made exploratory moves in Sumy, and so it would apply there as well. This is not about geography. It's about common sense. If Russia is attacking or about to attack from a territory, it only makes sense to allow Ukraine to hit back against the forces that are hitting it from across the border. Now, let me be honest with you. If I was all in on giving Ukraine these weapons and helping Ukraine, all this kind of stuff, this absolutely makes sense. I don't know why you would draw some kind of what this strikes me of, Joe, is giving American forces the ability to hit across the South Vietnamese border, but then not allowing them to actually hit in targets in Laos and Cambodia, right? I mean, these kind of ridiculous things. So if you're a supporter of the initial policy of giving them long-range U.S. weapons, this makes sense. That being said, I think giving them long-range weapons is a bad idea. I think giving them most of the weapons is a bad idea, but hey, that's just me.
Well, from a straight military perspective, it would seem to make sense to allow them to attack into Russia. But from a strategic perspective, those weapons are better used blunting the actual attack than attacking symbolic targets deep inside Russia, which only serves to further inflame Russia, give Putin more justification for what he's already doing, and just prolong the war. Wouldn't it be better to take these highly effective weapons and smash a hole in Russia's supply lines, or crush their front line and enable an actual offensive to take place, rather than shooting them onesie-twosie all throughout Russia, hitting targets that, unless mass fires are hit on one, don't really have any effect strategically?
Hey, Watcher, can you show the map that's at the bottom of the page? Always love a good nap.
So Joe's exactly right.
Yes.
I mean, this is, if the strategy is to mass fires in Russia, then fine. But if what you're going to do is drop one round here or there, all you're going to do is piss them off.
Mm-hmm.
So, Karen, here's a picture. I just wanted to, you asked for a picture to go with the word. So there you go. There was that map. That was a picture. Not sexy, but it's there. All right, gentlemen, that's about all we got for today. Let's go around the horn and then let's talk one more time about the event in August now. Joe, looking towards the weekend, we're going to be doing the domestic Friday show as normal. Anything you see brewing in the background in the domestic scene?
Yeah, I would watch for increased political violence and increased leftist action. There are websites calling for attacks on police stations, attacks on National Guard armories, and attacks on law and order in general. I think that over the last 30 days, we have seen a massive increase in the numbers of law enforcement officers shot in the line of duty. And I think that that's just all going to continue as we go down this road. You are already in the collapse. It just doesn't look like what you thought it would.
Yeah, that's a good point. Don?
Again, think Joe is pretty much right on the money here. There's not anything else that I am aware of that is of substantial importance. Maybe that's not true. There have been a couple of 911 outages that haven't been reported. There have been a handful of power outages or mild interruptions that have no justification published. These things are going to continue to go on. They're going to continue to escalate. I don't know that that's going to happen over the weekend, but you could probably expect some minor interruption somewhere over the course of that time frame. And that is going to correlate with the increased leftist violence. We're back into protest months, right? Which is a bit of a misnomer. It's riot months at best.
Rainbow Ramadan.
Exactly, right. And, our favorite black-clad morons are going to be back in the streets and politically granted the capability to break stuff. And they're just going to keep doing that.
Hey, if you want a Rainbow Ramadan t-shirt, send me a DM and tell me your size. They're black and they say Rainbow Ramadan on them. I just can't put them on my website because I like my website to stay where it is. But if you want a Rainbow Ramadan t-shirt, send me a DM with your size and we'll talk about payment arrangements then. So,
Watcher, how you feeling?
I'm very sick. I'm very tired. I think I'm going to go back to bed now.
All right, brother. You take it easy. All right, real quick. Let's just talk, different people watching at the end of the show than the beginning of the show. Real quick. We're doing the CFC event, but we're doing it with the sponsorship of Shield Arms. And we have changed the date. It is now the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of August. That's the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that first weekend of August. We had to do that for various reasons, but ultimately there was just conflicts that we couldn't get around for the original date. So this date works out. All the key players will be are still in. If you were planning on coming, I just want to make sure that God forbid anybody has already put money in the barrel. I think we've got enough time for people to be able to change any plans. The good news is, Joe, we've got the training going on before that. So if you want to make a week of it, you could absolutely do a training event with Joe beforehand. Anything going on at the week after, or is it just?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe Hunch and I discussed some hangout plans there in the area. He's got a work project relatively nearby.
It is a beautiful area in Montana, though, right? So
yeah, it's Montana. There's always something to do.
Just come fish, if nothing else.
Why does this not surprise me here? Daisy Girl Williams says, Temple did a morning live show today about Seattle hiring illegals for their police force. I mean, we've been saying this forever, right, Joe?
I will point out that it is still unlawful and a $5,000 a day felony to knowingly employ an illegal alien in any capacity, law enforcement or otherwise.
Yeah. All right. So we will have a website out this week, I am told. So that we'll have all the details, and you could start processing and registering for the show. We will be announcing guests between now and the dates of the show. So stay tuned for that. We'll be plugging the website pretty much on every show we do between now and once it launches. Once the website launches, we'll be plugging it on every show. And we'll actually, when they put it up, we'll do a deep dive and we'll go through that website to show you everything and talk about it and answer questions from the chat. So a lot of cool guests that are coming, people that we originally weren't even counting on coming. So it would be I hesitate to make specific announcements until they're confirmed, but some really exciting stuff going on in the background for this. So stay tuned. All right. If there's nothing else from the council and nothing else from the chat, please like the video if you would. Subscribe to both channels, either Rumble or YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Share that link out. We don't get a whole lot of promotion from YouTube or even Rumble for that matter. We do make it onto the front page of the live show from time to time. But if you would go ahead and share that link out, let people know that you're getting good stuff over here at the Council on Future Conflict. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe.